Welcome back to Morning Joe. It is 41 past the hour. 34 U.S. senators face re-election in 2020, but only 2 Republicans represent states that voted Democratic in the 2016 presidential election. Senator Susan Collins of Maine and Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado. Joining us now is a Democrat aiming to unseat Gardner in 2020, a former U.S. ambassador, a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under President Obama, and now a candidate for the U.S. Senate in Colorado, Dan Baer. He has most recently served in the former Governor John Hickenlooper's cabinet as Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Higher Education. You were just not qualified. I mean, seriously, you need to go back and do a little more. I hear a lot of former Obama staff members, cabinet members who are running for office, who are going out there trying to make a difference, and you're one of them.
Yeah, I think there's been a number of people around the country who have, particularly in 2018, a lot of the seats that we saw flipped, out of the 40 seats that flipped, a lot of them were candidates who, like me, had a record of public service, but not in politics, and particularly in foreign policy or national security. So you had Alyssa Slotkin in Michigan.
She's amazing.
Who's incredible and a good friend who I worked with in the Obama administration. Abigail Spanberger, obviously, in Virginia. Tom Malinowski and Andy Kim in New Jersey. We saw others around the country. Jason Crow in Colorado, who had a record of service, but had never been in politics. And I think what we found was that voters responded to these kind of national security Democrats who voters could see both the record of public service that had defined their lives, as well as the fact that when you've represented our country abroad or when you've served abroad, you have a sense of what it means to see institutions fall apart, when you have a sense of why American values matter in the world and why they matter so much here at home.
Hey, Dan, nice to meet you. I'm curious, you've got before you can get to Cory Gardner, you're going to have a very crowded primary field that you're going to have to get through out there. You got, I think, about as many Democrats who are looking for this seat as there are in the Democratic race for president. So just talk a little bit about what that field looks like and what sets you apart from the Democrats who you're going to have to win first, you have to beat first before you get to go up against the incumbent.
Sure. I mean, I think, look, I'm running against Cory Gardner. It's hard to know where Cory Gardner ends and Trump begins these days, and it's a real disappointment because Cory Gardner, when he auditioned for this job, when he interviewed with the people of Colorado, he said he was going to be a moderate voice in Washington and that he would be an independent voice, and instead he's just folded over and over again for Donald Trump over the last few years. So I am running against Cory Gardner. There is a primary. I think, one of the things I bring to that primary is a record of public service without a record in politics. I think across America we're seeing that people are interested in seeing a fresh face and that they respect a fresh voice and a voice that comes to this from a record of service. I would also be the first openly gay man in the U.S. Senate if I won, and I think that for some people that's a historic thing. For me, it's a personal thing, and I think having grown up in Colorado when Amendment 2 passed, for me, being a gay man and being out there in politics, I bring a sense of empathy to it. I have a sense of what it means to feel like you're left out or left behind, and I think bringing empathy to politics is something that gives me an ability to understand the voices that I hear around the state.
What's been your sort of reflections on watching Mayor Pete deal with this same issue? I think with ease almost. It's an incredible time right now. It
is an incredible time, and one of the things I say is anybody who's lived the life that I lived can't afford to be cynical. I mean, I grew up scared in a conservative place that I would never be able to live a happy life, much less a public life. And now I've been able to serve my country, represent President Obama as a U.S. ambassador overseas, and do that with my husband by my side. I mean, it was unthinkable.
And the Russians tried to get you expelled.
And the Russians tried to get me fired. In fact, when I arrived in Vienna as ambassador, one of the other ambassadors came to me and said, the Russian ambassador has been going around for the last 2 weeks and saying the new American is 36 and he's a homosexual, which I managed to use both of those against him effectively in the months that followed. But I think what Mayor Pete is doing is really impressive, and I hope that what people see, to the extent that people see something in common between us, is not just that we both happen to be openly gay.
Well, I actually think that's the point. I mean, I think for both of you, I think of your candidacy and your policies and your experience and everything that you have done leading up to this moment, perhaps making you extremely qualified for the position.
You've got an impressive resume, and you've clearly
Really?
overcome any fear that you had growing up about what your life was going to be about. And I'm going to ask you about an issue that is not national, really, in scope. It is in one sense, but it's so local that when you were in the Department of Higher Education in Colorado, how do we go about getting children, 10 to 14 years of age, instead of memorizing things, to think about things?
I mean, when you talk to employers today, what they say is what we need are the soft skills, the critical thinking, the ability to reason, to work in groups, et cetera. And I think, this is one of the questions that will define whether we can seize the opportunity of this moment. And I think, going back to Mika's question about the similarities between me and Mayor Pete, I hope that what people see is not only that we're both openly gay, but also that we both have a sense that this is a moment where we get to decide whether we are going to rise and meet the challenges or take the silver linings of this difficult time that we're through and create the foundation for a new American century or not. And I'm confident that we will and that we can, but I think figuring out how to see education as a national security issue, as an issue that is central to whether or not we succeed in the 21st century, because those 10 and 14-year-olds in Colorado that you were talking about are going to be competing with 10 and 14-year-olds who are in Chennai or who are in Johannesburg or anywhere else around the world when they enter the workforce. And they need to have the skills to be able to compete on a global playing field. And we need to make sure that they have those skills and that we keep that playing field fair.
And you'd go on Fox for an interview, right?
I would go on Fox for an interview.
Okay. Dan Bayer, thank you very much. Great to have you on. Up next,